So you want to buy a Helix but can't decide which one's right for you? Don't worry, I'm going to help you choose. As of 2024, there's more than 5 models available on the market. Choosing which one's best for you and your bass rig can be a bit overwhelming. In this video, we'll help you lock down your needs, overview the various models, and offer some recommendations. If you're new to the channel, I'm Twistie. Stick around to the end and we'll go through what I'm using. Let's have a look. Before you can start to assess which model's right for you, you first need to consider where you want to use it, what you want to use it for. Some of the considerations you need to take into place are your budget. How much are you willing to spend? The higher end units can be in the thousands, and the smaller units like the HX Stomp is in the 500s. What about the performance? Do you need a full featured multi-effects processor on a floorboard that replaces your entire bass rig, includes amps, cabs, or do you just need the effects? Or do you just need something that fits on your pedal board to augment what you already have? What about the size and the portability? Do you travel? Do you fly? Do you gigs? Is space an issue? Does it need to fit in your gig bag, or are you okay taking it in a rack unit? The inputs and outputs. Do you need bass to Helix to front a house, or do you need to integrate with other gear? Is it being used in the studio where you need to connect to rack gear, or is it being connected into a bunch of other pedals on your floorboard? Or are you just going bass to Helix to front a house, or cab, or amp and cab? Foot switches and controls. How many foot switches are you going to need? Do you stomp in and out of effects throughout your gig? Or, like me, do you have it set and forget and maybe change patches when you're changing guitars with the odd effect now and then? The processing power. Do you have a simple signal chain, or do you want to run multi-path parallel processing with multiple amps and effects? Future expansion. Do you only want the effects, or do you want the ability to add amps and cabs later? Do you want the small rig now, or do you want the ability to have the ultimate do what you want to rig that you can use whenever you want for whatever you want? And finally, the location. Where are you likely to be using this? Is it primarily for your live rigs? Is it mainly in the studio? Is it something that you want to be able to portable between both locations? Take a look at your current bass rig and determine what you are looking to replace with your Helix. Are you just looking to replace some pedals? All of your pedals? Are you looking to keep your pedals but replace your amp and cab? Or are you looking to replace the entire lot? These are the things that will help you determine, as we go through the overview of the models, which one will suit you better. Let's have a look at the models. First, let's break down the options. We've got the Helix Floor, the Helix LT, the HX Stomp, the HX. New to 2024 is the HX1. And for those of you wanting a rack mounted option, there's also a Helix Rack. Each model has unique features, but they all share the cutting edge HX modeling technology and the Shark DSP, the processing. Let's check out the big kids on the block. The first of its kind, released in 2015, the Helix Floor is the flagship model of the brand. It offers extensive inputs and outputs. It has deep editing capabilities and an extensive library of amps, cabs, and effects. It has 2 DSP processors, and the Helix is great for both stage and studio use. Also released in 2015 is the Helix Rack. The rack offers the same capabilities as the floor, but in a configuration that separates the floorboard, or the pedal switches, from the processing unit, which can be housed in a rack, hence the name rack, and the foot switches are in a HX controller. For solo performers and home studio use, the floor and the rack both include the ability to connect a microphone to an XLR jack. This allows you to be able to play your bass and a guitar, or a guitar and a bass, and also have a microphone connected. As I said, as a solo performer, you can turn up to the gig with your Helix Rack or your Helix Floor, plug in your microphone and your bass, and you're off. In the studio, it means that you only need a single audio interface, being your Helix, which will allow you to connect microphones and bass or guitar so this becomes more flexible in your studio. What's not included with the HX controller for the rack that the Helix Floor has is an extremely robust expression pedal. Both of the premium models, HX Floor and HX Rack, have the ability to add an expression pedal or to control your amp channels if they're foot switch controllable. For studio work, if you have a number of other outboard devices, rack compressors, delays, reverbs, etc., the rack includes the ability to have an SB diff in, which the Floor does, but it also adds an AES EBU in, which is more like an XLR connection, give more flexibility to some older rack units. It also includes a world clock connector that allows you to better synchronize your Helix with your other outboard devices. The final difference between the Premier units is that the rack also includes a guitar pass-through output. This allows your guitar signal to be forwarded to the desk as a clean, dry signal or to be processed externally without the Helix processing it. This is great for professional studio use where you're looking to run a dry signal from your bass. However, if you're using the Helix in your home studio where it's connected via USB, this is not really of high value. So you need to look again, am I using it at home or professionally? Professionally outside of home. Check out the Riffs, Beard and Gear video for their live rig setup where they use a Helix rack with a power amp and some cabs for the guitar rigs. The link should be above me here. If it's not there, it's over here. The scribble strips on the pedal boards are handy to label what you have each switch doing, especially if you have a lot of effects to switch on and off or numerous presets to use in the switch. The next in line is the Helix LT. It has the same dual processor capability, has the same amps, cabs, mods, etc., but it has a reduced set of inputs and outputs to the Floor and the rack, which gives it a slightly smaller footprint and a little bit less weight. Comments from the internet indicate that the expression pedal is not as robust as that of the Floor, but as I don't use it, I really can't comment on that. The biggest difference between the LT and its bigger brothers is that you're limited to 2 send and returns while the others have 4. And you also don't get that XLR input, so you can't connect a mic directly to it as a balanced input. So if you want to carry a mic, you'll also need a small mixer or a separate audio interface for recording at home. The shrunken heads. While still great in the studio as an audio interface, the HX Stomp really excels when you use it in your live rigs. Not as powerful as the bigger brothers, the LT, Floor and the Rack, as you're limited to a single DSP for processing. It only gives you 8 blocks to use in a preset. But it still has dual output, dual input, and all the amps, cabs and effects as the bigger, more robust family. You are limited to a single send and return, but it does fit nicely on a pedal board surrounded by your other boutique pedals. So if that's what you're looking for, is something that will fit in with your existing things, then this is quite good. I've also sent Velcro to a rack shelf as part of an IEM system. So a band has had a full band in a box. They pulled out the drawer and the HX Stomp for the bass player and the guitarist was sitting Velcro to there. So everything was centralized for them. The XL model uses the same processing but gives you additional foot switches and a more pedalboard friendly layout. All of the ins and outs are on the back rather than surrounding the device. The HX Stomp makes an excellent fly rig or as a backup to your Floor or your LT. Surround it with your other boutique pedals or replace your entire live rig for a travel friendly bass setup that you can carry in one bag. What if you've got an amazing bass rig you really don't want to give up, but you want to simplify your pedal board with all the power of the Helix effects? This is where the HX effects unit comes into its own. Set it as the central feature to your pedal board, or to completely replace your pedal board. You won't have the amps or cabs of the other units, but you don't need them, right? Let's look at the pricing. As of the recording this video in 2024, Sweetwater, as an example site, I'm not affiliated and they don't sponsor, they're advertising the Floor at $1,500 US. The LT is $1,000 US, and the Rack is $1,600, But if you add the floor controller, it brings it up to $2,050 US dollars. For the smaller units, the HX Stomp is advertised at 550 US, the XL is at 600, and the HX FX is at 500 US dollars. Decisions. Remember we said, what's your budget? What do you need it for? So how does this all stack up then for the bass player? Well, in my opinion, as a bass player, it really comes down to your requirements, and there's really three outcomes. If you want the all-in-one powerhouse and wallet friendly, go with the Helix LT. If you want that compact live rig or a recording interface on the go, then the HX Stomp is perfect. However, if you're doing lots of professional studio work and you're happy to carry a rack with you, then the Studio King is the HX Rack. If you've got two guitars, vocals, and an expression pedal for a party as a solo performer, then the Helix Floor is probably the way you want to go. Remember, all of these units, except for the HX FX, which doesn't have the amps and cabs, share the same tone arsenal. Your bass will sound incredible no matter which one of these you pick. When I embarked on my Helix journey back in 2017, the Helix LT was the budget model. So that's what I went with. As we've already discussed, it's as powerful as the Floor, but it doesn't have all the extra wingdings that I didn't need. The scribble strips, the multi sends and returns. I can still run a dual output Attitude bass into this in the same way I could have into the Floor. When the HX Stomp was released in 2018, I realized that I could keep my Helix LT permanently connected to my home studio, as I have here, and dramatically reduce the size and weight of my live rig without compromising my sound with the HX Stomp. This is my full gig rig. So what would I buy? With all these newer models on the market, if I was to start this journey again, I'd probably do the same. The LT has a digital out that I want for the studio because I connect it with my other audio interface for my vocals and other things, so I need that connection. The Stomp doesn't have the digital. However, the Stomp is the perfect gig rig to me. If I didn't have the optical requirement, I would go with the HX Stomp XL for my live rig and an HX Stomp for my studio. This live rig still allows me to have stereo input, stereo output, so I can run my Attitude bass on this as I can with the LT. Hopefully this video has helped you make a decision on which Line 6 Helix is right for you. Let me know in the comments below which one you went with and why. It's always good to hear where other people are using these devices. Don't forget to check out my book, Ditch the Amps, Dig in the Helix, to get a great insight on how to make better use of your Helix, whichever you choose. The link's in the description below. Catch you later.